Hello, I am Paul Drinkwater. For most of my working life, I taught electronics to students in colleges and university, both in this country and overseas. But in my retirement, I joined the Gloucester Civic Trust and in 2010 trained as a tour guide conducting tours around the city. Over the last few years, I have, for Heritage Open Days, I have researched, prepared and delivered a number of talks on people and places associated with Gloucester's rich heritage over our 2,000 years of history. In this talk, we will be looking at Gloucester and the vacuum cleaner. I suppose Gloucester is more noted for its famous writers, poets and preachers rather than technology, although in the past it was of course a centre for ironworks and bell foundries. However, this talk is about the important role of Gloucester and in the invention, construction and history of the vacuum cleaner, a vital tool today in every home's collection of domestic appliances. The inventor was a Gloucester man, the prototype was built in Gloucester, and today the vacuum cleaner is manufactured and used throughout the world. This talk then will be in three parts: the inventor, the invention, and the history. First, we'll look at the inventor himself, and I'll concentrate on his Gloucester connection. Hubert Cecil Booth was born in Gloucester on the 4th of July 1871. At that time, his parents and three elder siblings were living at 7 Theresa Place in Bristol Road. His father, Abraham Booth, listed in the 1871 census as a timber merchant, was born in Liverpool in 1833. At some point, he moved down to the southwest and met Elizabeth Ann Watts, who in 1841 was working in service as an assistant in the Charlton family home in Sherburn, Dorset. In 1859, they married at Weymouth, and in 1861 were living near Penzance in Cornwall. By 1871, they had moved to Gloucester, employing two servants to assist in the running of the house. Elizabeth's sister, Emily Watts, was also living with the family. By 1881, they had moved to Bellevue House on the corner of Montpellier and Spa Roads. The house is now known as Park House, where there is a blue plaque indicating it was somewhere Hubert Cecil Booth had lived. Hubert was now 9 and attending school. In 1881, there were 44 private schools in Gloucester. As a young lad, Hubert attended Gloucester College, which met in the present Cathedral Library, and today is known as King's School. He later attended the Gloucester County School. In 1886, the Reverend Joseph Brereton was the chief promoter of county schools in Norfolk and Devon. 3 county schools were set up in Gloucester to provide first-class independent schools such as existed in Cheltenham and Malvern. One of these was for boys and was opened at Hempstead Court under the leadership of the Reverend Brereton himself. As Hubert was by then a teenager, it is likely that he attended it possibly as a boarder. Unfortunately, the County Schools Association was unsuccessful and wound up in 1891. The young Hubert had his sights on a scientific career, and to that end he passed the entrance exam and moved to London to attend the City and Guilds Central Technical College. This was in Kensington, where he went to study engineering. Whilst there, he boarded with the Brooks family at 15 St Michael's Square, Paddington. It was a 3-year course in civil and mechanical engineering under Professor William Cawthorne Unwin, FRS. At the age of 21, he qualified for a diploma, coming first in engineering and second in general. He joined the Institute of Civil Engineers as a student member. He then joined Maudsley, Sons and Field at Lambeth on the banks of the Thames as a draftsman, helping to design bridges, large Ferris wheels and engines for Royal Navy warships. The company closed down in 1900 and Hubert then set out on his own account and invented the vacuum cleaner, and in 1902 formed the British Vacuum Cleaner Company. But more of that later. In 1901 census, Hubert is listed as residing as a lodger with a Valentine and Muriel Davis at 5 All Souls Place, Marylebone, right next to the present site of the BBC, as a civil engineer. But it seemed he returned to Gloucester around this time, living at 27 St Michael's Square, and having patented his vacuum cleaner invention, commissioned local Gloucester firm of Fielding and Platt to build a prototype. In 1903, at the age of 31, he married local girl Charlotte Mary Pearce, the daughter of Francis Tring Pearce, who was the director of the Gloucester Millers, Priday, Metford & Co. The Pearces lived at a Lorraine house in Park Road. The wedding took place at Christ Church in Brunswick Road on 24th of January 1903. At this time, he also joined the Royal Gloucester Lodge as a Freemason. In 1911, Hubert Cecil and Charlotte Mary were living. In 1911, Hubert Cecil and Charlotte Mary were living at Amberley, Farley Lane, Purley, Surrey. They had 2 sons, Rupert, aged 7, and Edward, 3. Hubert's occupation was down as a civil and consulting engineer, and they employed a children's nurse and a young domestic servant called Susanna Clark, who also was from Gloucester. From 1903 to 1940, he was in general practice, handling the design and construction of railway bridges, factory plant, and other structural work. In 1910, he was transferred to the membership class of the Institute of Civil Engineers and became a Fellow of the City and Guilds of London Institute. During the First World War, he was engaged in the installation of vacuum cleaning plants in high explosive factories. After the war, he was concerned in the design of structural steelwork for factories and other buildings. He also designed suspension bridges in Burma, India, and South Africa, and many over and under bridges, both in steel and concrete, for various railway companies in this country. In 1939, at the start of World War II, Hubert, with his wife Charlotte and a 36-year-old son Rupert, was living at 107 Foxley Lane, Coulson. Hubert is listed as a civil engineer on Admiralty work and Rupert a consulting engineer. They had a living gardener and 1 domestic servant. In 1952, he retired as a chairman of the British Vacuum Cleaner and Engineering Company and died in a nursing home in Croydon on the 14th of January 1955, aged 83. Now look at the invention. When I was young, my mother would each year carry out spring cleaning. Among other activities, this involved cleaning the carpets and rugs. This was before the day of fitted carpets, when homes of ordinary people like us would have squares of woolen matting of various sizes in strategic places on the floor for people to walk on. Loose dirt could be swept up, but ingrained dirt and dust required a more vigorous treatment. Before the age of vacuum cleaners, this could only be properly carried out by taking the rugs and carpets outdoors and beating them with a suitable carpet beater. My sisters and I would be co-opted in this process to see how much dust we could raise. I don't recall we were ever required to wear masks in those days. With the advent of the Industrial Revolution and the use of mechanical devices, making many manual tasks much easier, it was natural that better methods were invented to clean carpets. In the 19th century, these mainly consisted of machines just to sweep with the use of brushes to loosen the dirt and a flow of air to blow it away. Many of these were hand-operated, but some also powered by electricity. In 1869, a Chicago-based inventor, Ives McGaffey, patented a sweeping machine and called it the Whirlwind. It was hand-operated. Although it did use suction, it was very inefficient and was not really what we would recognize as a vacuum cleaner. One day in 1901, Hubert Cecil Booth was in the Empire Music Hall in Leicester Square, London, to witness a demonstration of a new machine developed by a St. Louis railway worker to clean rail cars. In Booth's own words, the machine consisted of a box about a foot square having a bag on top and to which compressed air at 90 pounds pressure was supplied. The air was blown down into the carpet from two opposing directions while the box was pushed over the carpet, and the inventor trusted to the reflection from the surface underneath the carpet to drive the air up into the box. The inventor, of course, trusted on the reflection from the surface underneath the carpet to drive the dust and air up into the box. I remarked, this is Booth's words, I remarked that I could not see how one could get the dust out effectively in this way, as much must be blown out sideways. Further, a cushion or seat where there was no back to reflect the air could not be cleaned. I asked the inventor why he didn't suck out the dust, for he seemed to be going round three sides of the house to go across the front. The inventor became heated, remarked that sucking out dust was impossible, and that it had been tried over and over again without success. He then walked away. I thought over the matter for a few days and tried the experiment of sucking with my mouth against the back of a plush seat in a restaurant in Victoria Street. With the result, I was almost choked. I came to the conclusion that I could construct a machine to work by suction. A friend offered me to finance my experience, and I went ahead. He then went to work to design a machine. In 1901, he drew a patent and explained the diagram on here. You will see on the right, there's various components of the part, and he's creating a vacuum which will suck the air out. And he approached the Gloucester-based firm of Fielding and Platt to make a prototype at their Atlas works in the Gloucester docks. Fielding and Platt was founded in 1866 by two Lancashire men, Samuel Fielding and James Platt. They were hydraulic engineers and manufactured a variety of heavy machinery for pumping, winding, sawing and woodworking, etc. Booth's vacuum cleaner was not their usual type of thing. One wonders whether this was an exception because of Booth's local pedigree and models being a newer innovation. Perhaps being a Freemason helped. Booth called his new machine the Puffing Billy. The first machine was built in 1902 and had a trial run at St. Catherine's Manse in London Road. He made modifications and different models were made. In all, Fielding and Platt built 65 of these machines between 1902 and 1904. 20 were petrol driven and 45 by electricity. One innovation was the use of aluminium for the filters. The entry from their order book is one of several that show work done by Booth for his vacuum cleaners. This is a repeater order for the aluminium filters. During my research for this talk, I came across a long advert in the Citizen on June the 4th, 1904, and I quote from it. A message from the Gloucester Vacuum Company at the Atlas Ironworks, one of the numerous companies operating Mr. Booth's patents in this country. will bring to the scene a staff of skilled workmen who, by the aid of the cleverly contrived mechanical appliances, will do the required cleaning, not only in an incredibly short space of time, but in a thoroughly efficient manner. It goes on extolling the virtues of their services and concludes with, the Gloucester Vacuum Cleaner Company covers an area embracing the following districts: Gloucester, Forest of Dean, Stroud, Painswick, Minching Hapnett, Newent, Wootton under Edge, Dursley, Sharpness, Berkeley, and Whitmore. From this, it would appear that they are using the Fielding and Platt produced models before Booth sets up his own production facilities in London. Booth's patents were sold worldwide, and there are a number of countries who made machines and either sold or offered a hire service. But Booth's first British vacuum cleaner company models were such large machines powered by a gasoline-fueled motor, as shown here. Too big to go inside a house, the apparatus sat on a cart. It had a long hose that was taken inside to the carpets. The machine was very noisy, and the whole contraption was on wheels and pulled by a horse. But it worked. He went on to develop a smaller version which was powered by electricity. The breakthrough in sales came when, and again I'm quoting from Booth's actual account, almost the first work which the original machine did was to clean the great blue coronation carpet under the throne at Westminster Abbey, prior to the coronation of His late Majesty King Edward VII, and by his command it was used to give a demonstration to him and the late Queen Alexander at Buckingham Palace on the 23rd of October 1902. Later it was demonstrated to President Falières at the Élysée Palace in Paris, and afterward to the Emperor William II and late Tsar Nicholas of Darmstadt. You will be interested to hear perhaps that the late Sultan Abdul Hamid of Turkey shortly after this bought a similar machine for his own use in Constantinople. During the First World War, there was a serious outbreak of spotted fever among the men of the Royal Naval Reserve at Crystal Palace, and there were a number of deaths there. An officer from the Admiralty visited Booth and requested a vacuum cleaner to clean out the Crystal Palace. Booth sent 15 high-power machines, and within 3 or 4 weeks the dust, which had been inches deep on the girders, was removed to the amount of 26 tons and buried. The health of the men at once improved. He also was engaged to clean the Royal Naval College on the Isle of Wight. The first central installation, rather than a mobile van, was made on the premises of Messrs. Dickens and Jones of Regent Street, London, and after that one was installed in the House of Commons. Theatres, hotels and railway companies also rapidly adopted this system of cleaning. So the business became a success. Because of the cost of the machines, thousands of pounds in today's money, customers could hire a machine on a subscription basis, with uniformed vacuum operators making regularly scheduled cleaning throughout the city. For £13, which was the annual wage of a scullery maid, a home could be cleaned thoroughly. The company was based at Parsons Green Lane. The vacuum cleaning business was not without its critics. In the early days, the police were unhappy with the machines on the public streets and many summons were issued. There were also complaints about the noise the machinery made while the cleaning process was underway. The company was often sued for damages for allegedly frightening cab horses in the street. There was those who questioned whether Booth's apparatus was truly an invention, and there were many challenges to his patent. But his patent production was upheld. In fact, he sold licenses for others to make the device in many different countries. On the other hand, there were many customers amongst businesses and the wealthier in society who gladly paid to have their properties thoroughly cleaned. Now let's look at the history of the vacuum cleaner, how this new invention developed over the years. The basic principles to create suction, there's two methods really. The first is the vacuum method. This was Booth's vacuum pump. By mechanically turning a wheel with an arm that pulled air out of a cylinder, then a vacuum will be produced, and this was used to develop the vacuum cleaner further. But as we've seen, this required quite a lot of power, and it meant the original vacuum cleaners were rather bulky devices. The other method, of course, of producing a vacuum is by using an electric fan. If we stand in front of a fan, the air blows straight at us. But if you can get behind the fan, put your hand up, you can probably feel the air that's moving, that's being sucked past you. This principle, of course, is the one that was developed because electric motors got more powerful. So let's have a look at the principle of a fan. First of all, you have the fan as a central part there, and the air is sucked in, goes through a filter, and is expelled out the other side. And this is a much more successful model. It can be made as a low model like that, or it can be a cylinder model, as it's called, or it can be like an upright model. The only difference in the principle is that the motor, as well as driving the fan, turns brushes to perform a sweeping action to loosen the dirt as the cleaner moves across the floor. Now, Booth's vacuum cleaner company, which he formed in 1902, then became the British Vacuum Cleaner Company in 1903 to reflect its international importance, and based at Parsons Green Lane, London. In 1914, it became the British Vacuum Cleaner and Engineering Company Limited, concentrating on industrial installations and other applications. In 1926, the company branded all their domestic vacuum cleaners under the trade name of Goblin. Goblin concentrated on the budget end of the market. For many years, their factory was one of the largest industries in Leatherhead, Surrey. In the early 1980s, it changed its name to BVC, British Vacuum Cleaners. In 1984, the plant closed and moved to Gosport in Hampshire. In 1998, the Goblin name was bought by Glen Dimplex, who also owned Morphy Richards. Their models were mostly budget cylinder cleaners. By the 2000s, the Goblin name was phased out in favour of the Morphy Richards brand. So we see how things changed over the years. Now let's look at probably the most famous name in vacuum cleaning, Hoover. James Murray Spangler was a departmental store janitor in Ohio, USA. He was asthmatic and suspected that the carpet sweeping he was doing at work was the cause of his ailment. He invented a device using an electric fan to suck air into a bag through a filter and took out a patent in 1908. He called his device the electric suction sweeper, as it was then the first upright vacuum cleaner as we recognise today. With the aid of his son and daughter, he set about producing machines for sale. Production was slow, so just 2 or 3 machines completed a week. He gave one of his machines to his cousin Susan Troxell Hoover, who was so impressed he told her husband William Henry Hoover, who, with his son, was at that time manufacturing leather goods. As a businessman, he spotted a market and purchased the patent from Spangler and formed the Electric Suction Sweeper Company, retaining Spangler as production supervisor, with pay based on royalties in the new business. The name was later changed to the Hoover Suction Sweeper, the Hoover Suction Sweeper Company, which then produced the first bag on a stick upright vacuum cleaner. Initially, sales were slow, but Hoover started to give an innovative 10-day free home trial. The business took off, and eventually there was a Hoover vacuum cleaner in nearly every home in America. By 1919, Hoover cleaners were widely manufactured with the time-honored slogan, "It beats as it sweeps as it cleans." Hoover was brought to Britain in the 1920s. Initially, they were manufactured in Canada, but in the 1930s, the iconic Hoover building on the Great Western Road in Perivale, London, was built and was the UK headquarters. In its heyday, some 1,600 people were employed on the site, and it was considered a model factory with regard to worker welfare. During World War II, it was used to manufacture aircraft parts. In the 1980s, the building was given the Grade 2 listing and the company moved its headquarters to Merthyr Tydfil in Wales. Hoover vacuum cleaners became so popular in Britain and in some other countries that the word Hoover became synonymous with vacuum cleaning. Interestingly, the Americans just used the word vacuuming for that process. Electrolux was founded in 1919 by Axel Wenner-Gren in Stockholm, Sweden, by the amalgamation of two companies, Lux and Svenska Elektron, who both made early model vacuum cleaners. The object of the new company was to improve on American-made cleaners by making their models lighter and easier to use. Their first model, the Lux 1, in 1925. Many models have been manufactured since, and a range of domestic appliances, including refrigerators, dishwashers, washing machines, vacuum cleaners, and cookers, sold under a variety of brand names worldwide. The company is now considered as the second biggest in terms of appliances. New models include robot cleaners. The Henry. This is the brand name of a canister vacuum cleaner made and sold by Pneumatic. The company was founded in 1969 by Chris Duncan, having seen the need for a rugged and reliable cleaner to clean the inside of boilers. Henry came about when Chris Duncan at a trade show dressed up one of his commercial cleaners with ribbon, a Union flag badge, something like a hat, and chalked a crude smile under the hose connector. Passers-by were amused, and Duncan asked his advertising people to design a proper face. Henry has become a firm but practical machine, first launched in 1981. Sales took off and Henry has been popular ever since. Other models with different names have been added in the range. It is currently the only vacuum cleaner now manufactured in this country. Now we must talk about Dyson. Apart from the modern robot cleaners and battery-operated machines, the basic design principles of the vacuum cleaner has not altered much in 100 years, until only minor changes such as the visual design, the filtering process and the power of the motor have been made. This changed with the Dyson. In 1978, James Dyson decided there had to be a better way to clean his home than using the tired old vacuum cleaners of the day. His dream was to develop a bagless vacuum that didn't lose suction no matter what. As the filter collected more dust, it restricted the flow of air and therefore lost suction. This was the problem. The idea came to him after he spotted a local sawmill which was using a 30-foot high centrifuge cone to spin dust out of the air. He figured that the same technology could be shrunken down for use in a bagless vacuum cleaner. He spent the next 15 years developing and adapting his idea. You can see the way the process works. In the inlet hood, where the air is sucked in, In the cyclone, it spins round and the dust settles down in the collector at the bottom, and the fan, of course, is sucking it out, and that's where the clean air comes at the outside. Very effective means of working. In 1983, his first model, the Cleanese Rotork Cyclone, was built by Zanussi and sold by mail order. Only 500 units were sold. By 1985, a Japanese company, Apex Limited, licensed Dyson's patent and put it into production, a reworked version of the Cyclone called the G-Force, which came in 1991 and won the International Design Fair Prize in Japan and became a status symbol there. With the income from the Japanese license, James Dyson set up Dyson Appliances Limited in 1991, and the DA001 was produced by an American company. Philips Plastics at Wrexham in Wales. The first products were built in 1993 and sold for about £200. Dyson severed the agreement in May 1993 and within 2 months set up a new supply chain and opened a new production facility in Chippenham, Wiltshire. The first vacuum cleaner built there was completed in July 1993. The DA001 was soon replaced with the DC01. By 2001, the DC01 made up 40% of the upright vacuum cleaner market. Now, there are more models made from different manufacturers, but I think I've said enough to feed you the right information about the history of the vacuum cleaner. So, what are our conclusions? So, what can you conclude from this look at Gloucester and the vacuum cleaner? We've looked at the man from Gloucester who invented the first practical vacuum cleaner, the machine he came up with, and the Gloucester firm who made the early models. Then we have looked briefly at just a few of the many vacuum cleaner manufacturers worldwide and some of their models, which all stemmed from Booth's invention. As a Gloucester Civic Trust, we like to reflect on our heritage over 2,000 years of history and try to enthuse Gloucester residents to do the same. The development of the vacuum cleaner is just one part of that rich heritage. Thank you for listening.